So for a little bit now, I feel like I've had kind of a controversial little take, but hear me out on this, okay? It involves Fantastic Four, it involves Reed Richards, it involves Pedro Pascal. Now, it's a little bit of a weird topic because, there are people who are against Pedro Pascal being Reed Richards as they think, he isn't suited for the role, we can go back and forth. Right now, I'm okay with it. I like Pedro to a degree. There's certain things that I'm listening to that I don't believe I have a problem with. There's something I wanted to point out, and I feel like it's starting to become a little more clear because now I'm seeing people talking about it on Twitter, Instagram, and everything. There's articles coming from Vanity Fair that kind of maybe clear some things up. Now, as you know, the Fantastic Four takes place during the 60s in an alternate universe. It is not in Earth 616. So, people were, I didn't even realize this until recently, they could talk a little differently during that time. Again, it really doesn't have to be like that way because, again, it's a different universe. So you could literally just say they don't talk like that in another universe. We've seen in Doctor Strange where different universes, food is free and, things like that, it's just something that really doesn't need that much attention to detail, I feel. But of course, Marvel's going to do that. So one of the biggest things I felt like I wasn't mad about it, but I felt like just from the snippets that I've seen, that we've all seen in terms of little clips that we've seen so far of Fantastic Four First Steps to trailers, Pedro Pascal had a little bit of a different, I feel like, tone than what we've seen him in other things. Of course, Mandalorian, The Last of Us, and everything. I feel you probably make some arguments. Maybe The Mandalorian's a little bit similar, but there was I kept thinking why is Pedro talking in a little bit more of a monotone way? I feel like he's not emphasizing things. He's not really showing too much emotion. And listen, I don't want to lose you yet. I like it so far. I don't hate it. I don't dislike it. I like it, actually. I'm just most curious. I wonder if they were doing some reason why he's talking like that. Does it play into anything? Did they tell him to do that? Is his kind of his take on it? I was just curious. From Vanity Fair, Pedro Pascal did an interview talking about the cast, talking about the movie, talking about the role, talking about one thing in specific that I think really helps with me understanding why and maybe to you guys, why he talks the way he does in the movie. So Pedro Pascal says Marvel, had this thing where he was working with a dialect coach and, he was working on the 60s accent and he was doing too well that they actually pulled it back a little bit. So the actual quote says, they had a dialect coach that was sort of gonna help us into that kind of dialect. And I took to it so well, they were like, talk more like yourself. Which I guess if you do too good of a job, they actually too believable. I had a hard time doing that because I was so into that era, which for me was something to step into. So it's different than what we've seen before. Hilarious tweet I literally just saw when I just scrolled down a tiny bit to the replies. They said hiring a dialect coach so you can tell your actor to talk like they normally do is crazy. That's pretty funny. But, the more I thought about it, maybe he's trying to do kind of a little bit of a hybrid of a modern thing and a 60s things. Again, we're going off very few lines. We maybe got two clips and some things from the trailers. We got him saying, I don't know. We got a few things. I feel like there's some type of thing with it. I feel like maybe, obviously he's directed in some way. Obviously he's doing it the way they want. But I wonder if it play in anywhere. I'm being that that nerd right now. But I wonder if it plays into anything as to is he almost so smart that he becomes a little detached in some type of emotional connection department. Again, we've seen a lot of things in the trailer to prove me wrong right there. He's having the baby Franklin. He's very intimate with Sue. He hugs Johnny and everything. Just something I wanted to point out. And again, I wasn't losing sleep over this. I felt like I had to point it out. But I don't know. I want to hear you guys' thoughts. What do you think of this down below? Do you think what do you think of kind of how he's speaking? If you even noticed it, or am I just being an ass and doing what nerds do and looking too deep into it? Let me know down below.